Hello and welcome to the Northwood University webinar series. My name is Christopher Deming, and today we have the Northwood Idea, a refresher with Dr. Dale Matcheck. Dr. Matcheck is the chair of the economics department here at Northwood University and a regular presenter on this exact topic. A couple housekeeping items before we get started. Today's webinar is being recorded, as you may have just heard. A copy of it will be sent to you, a YouTube link that you can follow and share and go back if you'd like. The presentation materials will also be sent to you along with a survey, which we encourage you to fill out, which will allow us to guide our future webinars. And last but not least, if you enjoy programs like this, I encourage you to consider giving $5 to help support free events like this in the future. For the next 20 minutes, Dr. Matcheck will take us on a high-flying tour of the Northwood Idea, giving us all kinds of key insights that we may have missed if you had an early morning 8 a.m. class back in the day with Dr. Matcheck. But if not, there's some good things in here just looking at the presentation. We will have opportunities for Q&A at the end of today's presentation. So if you would, place any questions that you have in the Q&A tab on the right. That'll help us sort and filter and find the questions that you may have. Please use the chat to communicate with all the other people that are on this presentation today. So without any further delay, please welcome Dr. Matcheck.
Well, welcome, fellow Timberwolves, and thank you, Chris, for that nice introduction. I think this is a great topic for a webinar. I'm reminded of the great golfer Jack Nicklaus, who went to his original golf instructor before every season began to get a lesson in the fundamentals. And that's what I hope we're going to be doing here today. I know you're all familiar with the Northwood Idea. The fact that you're here shows your interest, your continuing interest in it. And so I'm grateful for that. So I guess we should start with some of the fundamentals. The Northwood Idea is a personal philosophy that we encourage our students and alumni to adopt. What do we mean by a philosophy? A philosophy is a set of beliefs and values that influences our approach in life. It influences the goals that we set for ourselves. It influences the ways in which we go about trying to achieve those goals. And so it's a matter of creating intentionality in your life so that you don't end up at a certain point with a midlife crisis wondering how and why did I do what I just did. True success requires that you pursue the right goals in the right way. And we hope that if you're engaged in business as a career, that the Northwood Idea gives you a good framework for pursuing success in that area. So, where does the Northwood Idea come from? Well, I'd like to say that it was invented by Northwood, but it's a lot older than that. The Northwood Idea has, it has timeless principles that we've been aware of since in all recorded history. So even though Northwood is a young institution, the Northwood Idea is centuries, millennia old, because it's founded in certain features of human nature, and human nature doesn't change from decade to decade. So the people who are responsible for attaching Northwood's name to these principles are our founders, Arthur Turner and Gary Stauffer. And at a time when they were very young, in their 20s, they had this idea for starting a university, which even at that time, many people were questioning, is there real need for this? And using $60,000 that Arthur Turner had borrowed from his father-in-law, they set up our first campus in Alma, Michigan, in this building that you see here. Modest beginnings, less than 100 students, but it has become a great success. And we have over 50,000 graduates. We moved to Midland and established this beautiful Michigan campus in 1962. But we've had a number of other campuses and satellites and locations around the world. So we'd have to say that their vision was confirmed by the number of people that they benefited. And what is it about their core beliefs and values that became incorporated into our personal philosophy? Well, I think their experience demonstrated that commitment to hard work, a belief in individual responsibility and freedom and private enterprise are the source of human progress. And even at the time they were founding the university, there were some people saying those ideas are old-fashioned, out of date, and they're the way of the past rather than the future. And one of the reasons for that is because at the time, these ideas had a very rival set of ideas posed as a potentially more progressive vision. Sputnik was launched in the late 50s. At the time Northwood was started, many people were saying that this more technocratic, centralized approach to managing society's resources could ultimately lead to faster rates of progress. And even as recently as the 1980s, when I was in college, we had a textbook, which was the best-selling textbook in economics at the time, written by a Nobel Prize winner in economics, which predicted that the Soviet Union would overtake the United States as the world's most prosperous economy. Now, that textbook was the one I was using back in the 1980s. At that time, Arthur Turner, Gary Stauffer would have none of that. They had faith in freedom, that it would promote human welfare and progress in the future, just as it had been responsible for that in the past. And their goal in creating Northwood University was to create an institution which would educate the leaders of a global free enterprise system for years to come. So their faith has ultimately been rewarded. Now, the person I think most responsible for putting specific expression on their values and their philosophy was someone they recruited to the university, someone who was highly regarded with his PhD from Harvard University, who taught at Harvard and a number of different colleges and had participated in the world's leading think tank related to free enterprise economics. And his name was Orville Watts. And Orville Watts joined Northwood University when it was still very much in doubt. And he stamped his imprint on the university and on the Northwood Idea. And this is one of the ways that he expressed the Northwood Idea. And it's the way which many of you learned the Northwood Idea. In a nutshell, three components to it. This firm belief in individual responsibility and that we exercise our decisions constrained by moral law. And this is the fundamental basis of human cooperation in a good society. He also emphasized those old-fashioned virtues of hard work and thrift that we must pursue and delay gratification in pursuit of some larger aim and goal and be willing to pay the price for that. Success comes at a cost, and we're not entitled to it. But it's not just the end result that we're looking for. It's the process that he emphasized. When he talked about the importance of work, you have to understand we're not just working on our garden or whatever it happens to be. Work is the method by which we develop ourselves. So our real work is our own personality and our own capabilities. And each one of us is in the process of creating our own future, a better version of ourselves. And of course, he taught the importance of free enterprise. And in particular, he taught, I would say, the nobility of a career in business, where we should consider it as just as important and just as noble as any other calling, whether it's in medicine or teaching or any of the other supposed social services. There's a social aspect to a career in business that many people take for granted, but which he felt was incredibly important to our society. And I think the reason that he was able to come up with these core values and this way of expressing them was because he was a keen student of human nature. And he understood that human beings were by nature free That is, we are decision makers. That's what we do. We're not guided by instinct or limited in our intellect to do certain things in the way that they've always been done. We are uniquely individual, so we're going to do things in new ways using imagination, and we have this drive to express our individuality that is unique to humans. And so when this image was discovered on cave walls, even though the image itself is 40,000 years old, we recognize this as a contemporary human being, just like us. Somebody who had that intellect and that imagination and that creativity, that method of thinking in abstract terms, and that drive to use it to create something new and beautiful. And that's what each one of us wants to do with our own lives. Freedom is, for us, a process of personal development, and it is also a process of discovery. The limits of human achievement have not yet been reached. Freedom is the way by which we explore those limits. But our freedom must be constrained. There's no such thing as unconstrained freedom. It must be constrained by responsibility. When we make a decision, the same intellect that allows us to imagine things that have never existed before, that same intellect, it enables us to travel far into our past and see how the choices we have made have influenced where we are now and our current circumstances. And we recognize we have responsibility for where we are. But we can use that same intellect to connect our future choices to where we will be in the future. And that drive we have to improve our own circumstances and those we care about gives us a moral imperative to reject futures that are worse in favor of futures that we believe will be better. Each one of us is concerned about that, and responsibility is the way that we are held accountable for those decisions, those that either improve or those that are destructive. Each one of us, I believe, is not that interested in just making a living. We, of course we want comfort. Of course we want to satisfy our material needs. But beneath that, and more importantly, we want to make a good life for ourselves. Now, there is, I think, a troubling trend in our modern world, and that is a trend towards prioritizing safety, of thinking of human beings in a purely material sense, and making sure that, our material needs are met and that we're safe, and, as if it's only our bodies and not our spirits that need be the focus. We believe at Northwood University that safety is great, but it's not the sole purpose of human life. And we believe in taking risks. And when you couple risk with responsibility, as in the slide here, you don't put other people at risk by your decisions. You don't shift the burden of responsibility onto others. You accept the burden of responsibility. And by accepting individual responsibility, this is what allows people and even encourages people to let you make your own choices in life. And freedom grows only if and to the extent that we who exercise freedom take responsibility for it. Now, the work and thrift aspect of the Northwood idea is one that I think is very important. I try to emphasize it with my students, and I was inspired by an author that I read fairly recently. Nassim Taleb wrote a book titled Anti-Fragile. And in the book, he makes the point that there's a difference between dead things and living things. When subject to stress, dead things crumble. Here's the Acropolis in Athens. And as strong as it is made of marble, it will disintegrate over time when subject to even minor stresses of wind and rain. But we're not like the Acropolis. When we're subject to stress, as a living thing, we adapt. We do something that's too hard for us, and our body responds by saying, "Whoa, I better get stronger." And we enjoy the challenge, in spite of the pain and anxiety of attempting things beyond our current ability, because we know that we will progress and our capabilities will increase. And a career in business is stressful. There's no doubt about it. But the kinds of capabilities that it requires, you can see in this image I have here. It's called the Entrepreneurial Funnel. It's kind of a list of the things that you need to be successful in starting a new enterprise. It starts with the virtue of taking responsibility, of starting something, and the courage to take risks. But the alertness that you must have just to observe where are their problems, and the prudence to take risks that are achievable, not just foolish. And you need to motivate others because nobody can do it by themselves. You need to inspire your team, and that takes leadership ability, and you need to be creative. And if you have those things, and if they're centered in one person or one small group of people, you might have the basis of a successful enterprise, and that's assuming at the same time that you have good luck. All right, so it's not just self-development that a career in business promotes, it's service to others. In fact, that's the way you will be judged in your career in business. In your career in business, you're not going to be rewarded according to your efforts, unfortunately. You're going to be rewarded according to your results. And at the end of the day, you're only going to be successful if you've made somebody better off. Okay? They're not going to care how hard you try if at the end of the day you haven't given them a better deal, you haven't given them a better value, you haven't given them a better opportunity. So it's this service to others that gives business its standing as a calling equal to any other calling that we could consider in life. And when I use the word calling, I like this definition. Your calling or your vocation is the intersection of your passions, your abilities, your talents with the world's great need. And that's where you find your vocation, not your avocation, not the things you like to do for fun. It's great, for example, when you set as a goal climbing Mount Everest, and that's going to develop you and your talents to a great extent. And I really admire people who can do things like that. But at the end of the day, we don't need more people who've climbed Mount Everest. We need more people who have made life better for the rest of us. And that's what businesses do. And even though their contributions may be unappreciated over time, they really add up. So as an example, when I was in college, you look at this flyer here, and you can see all the things, I won't go over them, but if you can see all these things that you would have spent thousands of dollars on back in the 1980s, and now you've got the exact same capability on this device that you can buy today for less than $200, you've really got something. You understand that it was people engaged in business enterprise that made this progress happen. So here's what Orville Watts wanted to emphasize in his essay about the Northwood Idea. The most distinctive feature of the Northwood Idea is the view that our graduates should look on business not merely as an easier way to attain ease and affluence, but as an opportunity for utilizing their highest human qualities and attaining lasting satisfaction in a life well spent. Now, I have to include one of the icons of Northwood University in my presentation here today, Dale Haywood, and I'm going to call on him to make another important point. We can't be lone rangers in this vocation, because our society must create space within each one of us can pursue that vocation. That's certainly true of people engaged in business enterprise. So Haywood would emphasize in his classes the importance of the free enterprise system for successful entrepreneurs. And it is a system, as he reminded us in his 12-cell matrix, that only Dale could teach the 12-cell matrix the way it should be taught. But remember, every single piece of the 12-cell matrix complemented every other piece. You couldn't just take 3 out of the 4 elements and expect the system to produce those fantastic results. So what are the elements of a free enterprise system? Private property, free market, profit and loss, and limited government. So there's no doubt there is a kind of political aspect to the Northwood idea, because we believe that when people are in charge of their government, and when that government is limited in its scope, it creates the space for private enterprise to go about solving the world's problems. And this is something that we firmly believe here at Northwood University. I think there's a lot of evidence to support Dale Haywood's ideas. Economic freedom has been linked to entrepreneurial dynamism. You can see that correlation here. Now, I have to be conscious of my time with you today, and I'm going to stop my formal presentation here. Even though there's so much more we could say about the Northwood idea, I want to give you all an opportunity to ask questions and to comment on what I've introduced here today. And so I'm going to return it to Chris so that he can moderate the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Dr. Matcheck. I appreciate you going through this with us. I did want to just recap of some of the sentiments that are in the event chat today. You're getting a lot of praise, a lot of people happy to see you again, a lot of people who have not returned and engaged with Northwood University in sometimes 10 years. So we've got about 125 people in this room right now that are so excited to be able to hear this. So thank you again for joining us. As a reminder, please place your questions in the Q&A tab on the right. I wanted to briefly call out Jesus, who asked who may own a double-sided belt because of Dale Haywood. As people know, Dr. Haywood is well known for preaching the value of a double-sided belt, which it appears Dr. Matcheck has brought with him.
Yes, the reversible belt, great Haywood prop. And I believe that I never had Haywood in class, but I'll bet many of you remember the image of him whipping off his belt to make a point about the Northwood idea. I won't do that. Well, I guess I just did that.
Well, that's the important part. You committed to the bit, Dale. That's really good. So we have a question here. Fantastic refresher. Thank you. I keep my Northwood book with me everywhere I go. Do you have any recommendations for additional books to continue my tune-up? I wrote down Anti-Fragile.
Oh, great. Well, I do recommend Anti-Fragile. I also think that older books that have stood the test of time are often a great source for this. So, I believe even though it's very old, it's a great, in many ways, it's very relevant. Capitalism and Freedom is a little book, a short book written by Milton Friedman, but many of its ideas are still fresh, and I would recommend that. Then again, I would recommend the magazine where many of the essays in When We Are Free came from, and that is The Freeman, published by the Foundation for Economic Education. If you go to their website, they're certainly in future editions of When We Are Free. So those are the two recommendations I would make.
Dale, I'm not sure if it happened for everyone else, but could you just recap your last sentence? I think we may have lost you for about 10 seconds.
Oh, well, I'm not sure I can remember my last sentence, but I said that for a course of future essays that will appear in future editions of the When We Are Free, that you should consult the Foundation for Economic Education website. And they are publishing new content all the time, as well as classic articles related to free enterprise and Northwood Idea.
Excellent. And I have to just point out that my edition of When We Are Free is sitting here proudly under a coffee cup, but always readily accessible just in case I need it. Question I have for you. You mentioned in the past, and I have the benefit of having looked at your slides before this presentation started. Are these ideas becoming less popular?
Oh my goodness. Yes, I had a student in class this week who said, I think we could improve Northwood by if we were to stop teaching outdated ideology. Now, I took objection. First of all, anybody's welcome to express their ideas in my class. So I was very kind to the student who just called the Northwood Idea outdated ideology. So I pursued it this way. I said, what do you mean by outdated? Do you mean that it's no longer believable? So we went through some of the variations of that. What became no longer popular? So, The Economist magazine had a cover story recently about how people in millennial Z frame going over the 50%. I understand that and they're expressing their dissatisfaction by blaming capitalism and looking for alternatives. But boy, you'd have to say, in spite of the evidence. I'll just show you one slide that I didn't have time to show you earlier. I'll show you a couple slides. Sorry. Here's the comparison of the generations and the way they feel about capitalism. And you can see that the millennials and Gen Z, it's getting worse. They're about 50-50 split, whereas baby boomers have a more favorable view of capitalism. But this is in spite of the evidence. We brought down poverty rates by 80% since I was in college. And today, somebody born anywhere in the world has a much better chance of living longer, of being better educated, of having more opportunity, of having the leisure and the ability to travel. It's just a better world. And how do you think this happened? One thing I try to help people appreciate, these solutions to our problems came through the minds, grit, and effort people engaged in business enterprise. Until people understand and appreciate that, we're at risk of losing that and making it more difficult for people engaged in those solutions.
I just want to quickly address, we had a question in there about suggesting that our younger alumni may not understand or appreciate these ideas as well as maybe some of our older alumni. And has Northwood considered mandating a 1 credit hour course for all incoming students? And in fact, Northwood does have a freshman level course called Foundations, where When We Are Free is on a high level taught. Sorry, Dale, I don't mean to steal your thunder here. But then the typical Philosophy 110 class, which you may be familiar with, is now Philosophy 4100. And they get the full brunt of it in their senior year. So it is happening, it is doing it, but as always, we're an institution of higher education, so people are allowed to have different opinions. We have another question from Jesus. In today's landscape, how would you approach the notion that we are too conservative of an institution for some, particularly prospective students?
I think that is a challenge. But it's time our institution was founded. That was also a time when there were alternative worldviews that were becoming more popular, and it was the decision of our founders to create an institution which would stand up for what they believed were timeless principles. And I think just as their faith justified by the growth of the institution, I think if we provide that for today's generation, that we will attract people that are interested in those ideas, and that we will be able to pass that along to future generations. So I feel that's our responsibility. I think there's a real need for institutions like Northwood University right now.
Yeah, I wonder, Dale, if you could just speak a little bit to what is the core timelessness of the Northwood idea? Why has it persisted for centuries or millennia?
Well, because I think it's based on a realistic view of human nature, the one that I described. And I think that it resonates with people. I have lots of students from across the political spectrum. But one thing we can connect on is this idea that I want to make my life into something worthwhile. And I want to be intentional about it. And I think once they understand how the Northwood philosophy supports them in those efforts, and how they support an entrepreneurial society, I think I don't think it's necessarily a partisan or anything like that. I don't think it has to be, and I don't.
Sorry, Dale. I think we may have a slightly rough line, but with that being said, it is just past 12:30, and with respect for your time and the time of our attendees, I know we do have some additional questions that are lingering in the Q&A, and I apologize for not being able to get to those. But with that, I did want to bring us to a close. Thank you, Dr. Matcheck, for all you've done and for your years of stalwart advocacy for the Northwood idea. It is indeed alive and well on Northwood University's campus, and young students every day are being encouraged to follow their passions through it. So without any further delay, thank you so much for joining us today. Please look out for that survey, the recording, and the presentation materials. They should be sent to you later this afternoon. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or suggestions about this series, please email us at alumni@northwood.edu. Thank you so much.